It's time for your Date Prep Guide, the study for you who want to date like you know what you're doing.
Welcome to the book study of Date Like You Know What You're Doing, your Date Prep Guide. The study designed to prepare you to succeed in the always risky but potentially rewarding, wild and wacky world of dating. I'm Michael Johnson. You can call me MJ. In addition to being the author of the book, I'm also husband to my wife, Julie. In fact, this is us back a long, long time ago, and I had way more hair on my head and way less hair on my face. The date was actually December 11th, 1992, exactly 3 weeks before we got engaged, for which my wife had absolutely no idea because I lied to her, but that's a whole nother story. That said, I'm also the father of 5 blessings from above. This is us, the day we adopted our youngest 2 from the state foster care system, and then this is us just 10 short years later. I'm also co-founder and dean of dating at FMU. Our mission is to empower you to grow spiritually and date wisely so you can marry well. And that mission has had me studying, writing, and teaching on the topics of sex, dating, and relationships since 2003. Toward that end, we deliver practical, biblical answers to your questions about sex, dating, and relationships so you can date with clarity, confidence, and courage on your journey to marriage. Our goal in this opening session is to share a little bit about my own dating story to set the stage for what we'll cover over the course of 21 chapters and 16 videos. What is this? In doing that, I think you'll see that I've struggled enough in my own dating life to be able to connect with your own struggles and with the struggles that your friends have been having with dating that you want to help. Way to be a good friend. But beyond grasping how hard dating can be, I think you'll see I've acquired sufficient perspective, experience, and insight not only to help you help your friends avoid making the same mistakes that I made, but to empower you and them to thrive in relationships. But first, you should know a little bit about my own dating life. In fact, before I wrote the book, before we started FMU, before we raised kids, or before we entered wedded bliss, I was a hopeless romantic. In a word, if you just want to simplify it, I was hopeless. I wanted a girlfriend in 3rd grade. I even wrote a song about her called My Darling's Moving from Missouri. Yes, I grew up in Missouri. That part was true. But I didn't even have a girlfriend. And yet I wrote a breakup song with a girl that I never had. But forget about girlfriends. I couldn't even get a date until college. Well, I mean, except the 2 girls I went to prom with as friends. Not the same prom. By the way, thanks, Christy and Heather. Oh, and I gave a necklace to a girl I liked back in middle school. It was 14 karat solid gold plated. But all that to say, no dates for me in high school. Now, at this point, you might be saying, why should I read a dating book by a guy who couldn't get a date? Well, fortunately, college was much kinder to me. In fact, my freshman year at college, I might have went out with over 30 different girls. And I know that, because when I share this live, there's sounds of disbelief, but there's actually 3 words that clearly explain how somebody like me could go out with over 30 different girls in 1 school year. Favorable gender ratio. In other words, there weren't a lot of guys asking at college, and so that pretty much made college my oyster. That said, I made a lot of mistakes along the way to marrying my best friend, but my dating story had a good ending. In fact, for 30 years, Julie and I have shared an amazing marriage. But that's partly because I read a book that prepared me for marriage before we ever started dating. And that's also because Julie and I did something by accident that we want to encourage you to do on purpose. Now, that said, what do I know about dating today? Well, I know dating is largely not even happening anymore because you get over that in middle school. In the world, hooking up actually seems safer than dating. It seems safer to bare your body than to bare your soul, as if the two weren't connected. And then in the church, people aren't dating anymore because coffee equals marriage. See? I also know that the dating that is happening is mostly happening online now, which means that it vastly expands your dating options as it lowers both your confidence and satisfaction. And this isn't just about dating, this is basic consumer science that shows that as your options expand, both your confidence in making the right decision and your satisfaction after making your decision decline, which means you have to fight the commodification of the people you date. They're not just an option, they're a person. They're not just some profile, they're someone. And the reality is I had to fight this commodification without the internet. I just naturally would walk into a room when I was a teen or a young 20-something and look at the girls in the room and size up who I'd rather date first, second, third, and last. I know that's terrible. And what's terrible is the internet has now made that common for everybody. I also know that as your options increase, so does your competition. So while I only had to compete with the other guys in my youth group or college group or local community, you have to compete with everyone in the world. In fact, this is a picture of the few dudes in the young adult ministry when a cute new girl walks in the door. Actually, online, it's far worse. And as you age, it doesn't become any easier to find the one. When you're young, you hardly know who you are, so that presents some obstacles in finding the right person that's a match for you. But as you become more mature, you tend to become more inflexible. More than my awareness of what's going on in the dating world, I understand what's at stake. For instance, percent of all adults currently married in America, less than 50%. Percent of adults 25 to 34 are currently married, drops down to 27%. Percent of adults 18 to 24 are currently married, goes down to 7%. And yet, percentage of 13 to 35-year-olds who desire marriage, 77%. And then this stat, you will not believe, but it's actually the most recent stat we have, just came in last year. Percent of high school students who expect marriage, 95%. Yet only 50% of all adults are married today, not even 50%. This is a huge problem. Think about it in economic terms. Imagine if 95% of high school students expected to be full-time employed, and yet they lived in a culture where less than 50% of all adults were employed. And actually, it's even more serious, even though it's not economic. Because marriage has been the foundation of every stable society across time and culture, because it was designed to meet our deep need for relational intimacy, and in doing so, create the optimum environment to raise up future generations to marry and do the same. All of that said, a dating life that leads to a life-giving, lifelong marriage doesn't happen by accident. You need to know what you're doing. Because you know what does happen by accident? Heartbreak, rejection, and regret. No one intentionally seeks out to achieve these outcomes, yet they require no tools, no knowledge, and no skills to obtain. But the reality for most people out there dating, they're just like I was when I was dating. They don't have any effective tools, accurate knowledge, or practical skills to even survive, much less thrive in their dating life. They're just out there winging it. But they hope and even expect that they'll eventually get the hang of it and wind up winning. But if you want to succeed at anything, you need to acquire effective tools, accurate knowledge, and practical skills, and you need to put them into practice, even in relationships, especially in relationships. So consider this book and this video series as tools to increase your knowledge not only on what makes dating relationships work, but all relationships work, to equip you with skills not only to thrive in your dating life, but to thrive in every area of your life. This is the reason for this class, to empower you to grow spiritually and date wisely so you can marry well, to empower you to date in such a way that you're more likely to end up in a life-giving, lifelong marriage, and to empower you to enjoy the journey.